Hi, I'm Kevin O'Riordan, and I lead the Wal-mart technology team here in Reston, Virginia, and we're really excited to be part of this great event today. Our next guest will be speaking about confidence, a topic she knows a ton about. She's the lead anchor for BBC World News America, and her most recent book, The Confidence Code, is her second New York Times bestseller, and quite frankly, a definitive work on the topic. Please welcome Katty K.
Really confident I would have dressed like Kevin this morning and been in jeans and sneakers. It is so great to be part of this forum. Thank you all for being here, and to all of you who are watching this around the globe. Walmart's really been in the forefront of some of these issues, and we've been thrilled over the years of writing books on women's issues to be working with the company and some of the things that you've been doing. The work that we've done on confidence came out of conversations I've had over the years with senior women in industries from politics to business to journalism to the military. And I'd hear these women say things like, you know, I'm just lucky to have got where I've got to, or I was in the right place at the right time. Or in my case, the only reason that I've been successful in America is because I speak the way I do. It must be that British accent, right? We know it gives me extra IQ points because it couldn't possibly be my own talents or my hard work or my own ability. That would be preposterous. And it led us to think, is there a gap in confidence between men and women, particularly in the workplace? Because women, when it comes to their personal lives, think about it, your relationships with your kids, with your spouses, with your friends, women tend to be very confident in those areas. But when it comes to our work lives, something is going on where we start undervaluing our ability, which is crazy. Because if you look at it, women are incredibly able. This is a great time to be a woman in the workforce. We're getting more degrees than men, we're getting more postgraduate degrees than men, we're getting more PhDs than men. All those qualities that used to be seen as soft skills, our ability to communicate, our ability to read a room, to interact well with people, to bring about consensus. We're great mentors. Those things used to be seen as soft, now they're seen as profitable. The thing is, women don't seem to be recognizing that yet. And it is holding us back. This gap in confidence is holding us back. Hewlett-Packard has done work on this. Women will apply for a promotion when they have 100% of the skills for the job. Men will go for that same promotion with just 60% of the skills because they figure, guess what, they'll learn the rest when they get there. And they're right, and so would we. Manchester University in the UK, for the last 7 years in the MBA program, they've asked men and women, what do you think you deserve to earn 5 years after graduating? Men, on average, say they deserve to earn $80,000. Women think they deserve to earn $64,000. Do we really think we're 20% less valuable? There's no evidence that we are, but we are underestimating our value. Columbia University, men tend to overestimate their ability by something like 30%. It might not be the only thing they overestimate, but they do overestimate their ability. Women tend to routinely underestimate our abilities. And that's what we need to do. We need to close this confidence gap. It's very simple. All we want to do is bring our perception of our ability in line with our actual ability. Men skew high, women tend to skew low. Time and again, you can give men and women a scientific reasoning quiz. Women will say they have performed less well than they've actually performed. Men will say they have performed better than they've actually performed. In reality, we've done pretty much the same. We need to bring our perception of our ability up, because when we lack confidence at work, it holds us back from getting as far as we can. I would say it holds us back in life. You want to run for PTA, but you're worried about what the other women and men on the team might think. You want to run a marathon, but you don't think you've got the ability. You want to learn Spanish. Are you really up to it? You want to go across the room to meet that interesting-looking stranger at the party, but you're worried about getting rebuffed. Confidence is what's going to get you there. And it's particularly important in the workplace. There was a great study done by a guy called Cameron Anderson out in Berkeley in California. And Cameron Anderson studies the relative importance of competence and confidence when it comes to success. He gives his students a quiz, a historical quiz, and they just have to tick the things that they recognize. And in that quiz, he puts in what he calls a few fakes. There's a Queen Shabab makes an appearance, and there's a Murphy's Last Ride. So he gets the students to tick all these things. And the students who tick the most amount of fakes, he deems to be the most overconfident. They think they know more than they actually do. They're probably also a little bit less competent than the others. Fast forward to the end of the academic year, the students who are the most overconfident are the ones who have the most status in the group. They are the ones whose ideas kick up to the next level, who are universally respected and admired, who are seen as the leaders in the group. They have the most success. His conclusion is that when it comes to success, confidence matters as much, if not more, than competence. When I first did this interview, I write this book with a co-author, Claire Shipman. I did this interview with Cameron Anderson, and Claire said to me, no, Katty, I think you've got this wrong, which doesn't suggest a lot of confidence in her co-author. And it can't possibly be true. I mean, it's an absurd idea that competence could not be as valuable as confidence. So we went back to Cameron Anderson, and sure enough, this is his conclusion, that confidence matters more than competence when it comes to success. And then we thought this was so depressing, we almost didn't put it in the book. Because for women, it's anathema. We are all about competence. We think that if we put our heads down and we work hard and we play by the rules and we colour in the lines, somebody will come along and tap us on the shoulder and tell us our natural talents have been rewarded. And then we've looked around us, kind of irritated, as the guys around us have got promoted over us and pay rises bigger than ours, and we knew they weren't more competent than we were, but they had something else. They had confidence. And we decided we needed to put this in the book because it is time for women to redefine what talent really means. A part of talent is having confidence. It is that ability to speak up in a meeting, to come up with new ideas, to tell your boss when you've had a success, to go for that promotion, to be in the forefront of the team and show leadership capacities. That is confidence, and it matters when it comes to success. And I think it's time that women, rather than kind of shying away from this idea, embrace it, because it's something that we can all learn. It was about this time in our research that we started getting very interested in what confidence is, this quality that seems to have so much importance. Where does it come from? How could we define it? And we asked dozens of academics. We interviewed neuroscientists and psychologists and business professionals for this book. And we asked them all, inevitably, okay, can you define confidence for us? What is confidence? And time and again, we would be met with a pause. Well, it's complicated. And being academics, they all had different points of view. Eventually, we came to a professor at Ohio State University, Richard Petty, who defined confidence beautifully and simply for us. He says that confidence is the stuff that turns thoughts into action, and that thoughts without action are pretty useless. Confidence is the stuff that turns thoughts into action. It's wonderfully simple, and it's a great, I think, idea for women. And it's a virtuous circle, because confidence is what turns our thoughts into action, but when we take action, we get more confidence. We grow it. You can grow confidence by overcoming hurdles, doing things that are difficult for you, going outside your comfort zone, trying that thing that just seems a little bit too scary. That's how you build confidence. So confidence is all about taking action. Another study that we had in this book that was kind of, for me, the bookend of the research we did was by a guy called Zach Estes. He's out at the University of Milan in Italy. And he's a psychologist who is working on gender and confidence. Zach Estes sits men and women in front of what he calls a spatial awareness test. And the best way I can describe it is that it's like a series of Rubik's Cubes puzzles that they have to solve online. He gets the men and women in front of this test, and traditionally, women don't do very well in spatial awareness tests. We tend to fall shorter than men do. It's related to that ridiculous idea that we can't park cars and read maps. Anyway, he gets them in front of this test, and sure enough, the women do less well than the men. So he goes back over the test, and he finds that actually what's happening is that the women are skipping answers more often than the men are. Even though they know that that will bring down their score, they're choosing to skip a question. So the next time around, he goes to the next group and he says, okay, you all have to answer all of the questions. When the women have to answer the questions, guess what happens? They do just as well as the men. And when we asked Zach Esty, so why were the women skipping the questions? He said it was because they didn't want to risk getting them wrong. They would rather skip a question than risk answering it wrong. And that is a big issue for women and a big issue for confidence. It's all to do with perfection. Women are 25% more prone to perfectionism than men, but it holds us back from taking the kind of risk of answering a question where we're not 100% sure we're going to get the answer right, or raising our hand in a meeting when we aren't 100% sure that our question is immaculately formed, or going for that promotion where we don't have 133% of the skills. There's an element of perfectionism there. We are perfectionists in our work lives. We're perfectionists as wives. We are perfectionists as mothers. We are perfectionists in the kitchen. We are perfectionists in the yoga studio. Who hasn't checked their down dog to check it was more perfect than somebody else's? I learned the downside of perfectionism in the 2008 presidential campaign. I was traveling a lot because that's what political journalists do during primary campaigns. And my youngest child, I have 4 kids, my youngest was 2 at the time, and I would go off on trips all the time around the country on the campaign trail. And I realized that I would go off on a trip, and before I went on a trip, I would fill the fridge with extra food. I would lay on extra babysitting. I would leave long and quite obnoxious lists around the house. Poppy needs to go to piano, and Maya has a book report, and Jude needs to go to the doctor. And I found myself getting really irritated because my husband would go off on business trips and he wouldn't do any of this. So the next trip I went on, I probably did put my hands on my hips and said, listen, Tom, this is really not fair. I go off on all of these trips and I organize all of this extra stuff, and you go off on trips and you don't organize anything. And Tom looked at me and said, you know what, Katty, you're right, but I never asked you to. And he was right. So the next trip, no extra food, no extra babysitting, not a single list, and that was really hard for me. And everything was fine. And the only thing that was slightly damaged was my ego, because I realized I was more dispensable than I thought I was. And my husband did buy 10 pounds of cod for 4 people, so we had an awful lot of frozen fish in the freezer, and I don't even really like cod. But it was a very good lesson to me in not trying to be perfectionist in everything, because it is exhausting, and it will hold you back. We keep hearing stories from people in senior positions of young associates, male and female, where the woman will do everything, meticulously plan everything, and the guy is just throwing out ideas all the time, and half of them get rebuffed, and it doesn't matter to him. Because one other thing that men seem to do much better than women when it comes to confidence is let stuff roll off their back. We are like a dog with a bone. When it comes to a tiny little bit of criticism, or the smallest mistake that we've made, and we will cling to it. We will not let it go, and it goes round and round and round in our head. Athletes, female and male athletes, coaches who have trained both female and male athletes will say that one of the biggest differences between the two is that men will let things go. They make a bad play, they have a bad match, rolls off their back. Women will hang on to it, and it will affect their performance out on the court the next time around. It's an incredibly important lesson, I think, for women to learn from the men in our lives. Just watch them. Watch how they'll have a row at work. My husband had one recently with his boss. And after a few days, he came home and I said to him, okay, so Tom, how's things going with Jessica? And he looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, you know, you had a row with her a while ago. And he said, yeah, but that was 3 days ago. I was worried about his row with his boss from 3 days ago. It had gone for him. That's an incredibly useful lesson for women, because again, it's that kind of overthinking is one of the things that holds us back. So where does confidence come from? We were surprised to learn when we were writing this book that confidence is partly genetic, something like 25 to 40%. We did a lot of work with neuroscientists who are looking at confidence in monkeys and confidence in rats. I didn't know that there were confident and unconfident rats, but apparently there are. And they are homing in on the genes that affect our confidence levels. And they've narrowed it down to about 3. And they are the genes that affect hormones in our body, things like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And if you have a certain variant of that gene, you are more predisposed to confidence than if you have a different variant. So Claire suggested we should get our own genes tested for the book. I wasn't really thinking about this, so I kind of went along with the plan. And it's terribly easy, it turns out, to get your genes tested. You spit into a little tube and you send it off in a FedEx envelope, and then you spend 2 weeks sweating. Because what happens if your genes come back and they're not perfect? Because that would be all of your fault, right? Anyway, after 2 weeks, we get the email from the neuroscientists, and we open up the emails, and I stand before you a basket case when it comes to confidence. I have no genetic predisposition to confidence. And it was another moment in our research where we thought, what do we do with this? This is not what we expected. But in fact, what it made us realize is that whilst confidence is to some extent genetic, it's much more importantly a choice. It's what psychologists call volitional. And you can choose to take action. You can choose to take a risk. Try that thing that is difficult for you. Put your hand up in that meeting where you think everybody's going to stare at you and you might blush and you might sweat and you might say something that people think is stupid. What's the worst that's going to happen? The sky won't fall on your head. The earth won't swallow you whole. You will still be there. You could go for that promotion. You might not get it. Part of taking a risk is failing sometimes. But you'll still be standing. And taking risks is a prerequisite to building confidence. Act more. It goes with the idea of thinking less. We know that you can send a man and a woman into an identical review. The man will come out convinced he's about to get a promotion. The woman comes out thinking she needs to find a new job, that she's about to get fired, because she will have heard that one little line, room for growth, could improve on. And that's what will spin around in her head. I do the same thing. I've anchored shows where I've asked one stupid question in the course of 3 hours. 12 hours later, I'm thinking about that one stupid question. I'm not thinking about the other great stuff I've done during that 3 hours. The next day, I'm still thinking about that one question. 3 weeks later, I'm still thinking about that one dumb question. It probably wasn't even a dumb question. But it's going round and round in my head. It's called ruminating, and it's what women are very good at. We need to draw a line under the ruminating because it stops us from taking risks. So that's really the critical part of the confidence code. We need to act more and think less. But the final part of the confidence code is being authentic. We wrestled with this a lot while we were doing our research. Basically, the idea of, do you have to be a jerk to be confident? Is the person that's confident the one that has the most swagger and the most bravado and the person that dominates the meetings and speaks loudest and longest? Is that what confidence is? Because I think for a lot of women, that's kind of an alien idea. We feel like we're putting on somebody else's armor. It was Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, who we interviewed during the course of this book, who kind of helped us with this issue. And she said, the most important thing for women is to be authentic. Remember, you have all of those talents. All of those things you bring to the table, an ability to listen, to build consensus, to read a room, having high EQ, being great managers. Those are important skills. You don't want to jettison those in the pursuit of confidence. Trying to put on somebody else's behavior doesn't work for us. We know in the 1980s we wore those horrible shoulder pads and the string ties, and believe me, it really didn't work. We don't want women to become men. The value of diversity and the reason that it works is because we bring different perspectives to the table. So you need to have your voice heard. We can't afford for you not to. You're not there by the grace and favor of your employer. You're there because you're valuable. We need to hear your voice. You don't need to apologize for it, and we need to hear your opinions, and we need you to get up to the top. But do it in a way that is authentic. That is what is going to work best for women. So act more, think less, and be authentic. The 3 tenets of the confidence code. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now over to Karen Ann. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Katty, that was fantastic. We do not want women to be men.
No, it doesn't work.
And we need your voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your comments. So the way that I think we can learn as well is through the stories of women who have been on confidence journeys. And we have assembled a panel today of people who have been through the journey personally and have a great diversity of experiences. So let's spend some time talking about the journey and some of the ideas that we have actually formed and learned on our journey. So with me today, I would like to introduce to you 3 phenomenal women. The first is Jaquetta Bratley. Jaquetta joins us. She is a store manager. She's been with Walmart over 5 years. She has a very, very interesting take on confidence. Also joining us is Shelley Broader. Shelley runs all of the EMEA, Canada, the UK, and Africa region for international. And also joining us is Mary Beth Cromwell. She has responsibilities for all of the home category in merchandising for Walmart US. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with this concept of confidence. It's often described as looking comfortable, making it look easy. I love Katty's definition of action, taking ideas into action. You are all very, very confident women. What is it that underlies how you make it look easy?
When I think about confidence, I think about taking risks. So a confident person or a confident woman, you must take risks. And just understand that when you take those risks, there is a big reward to the risks. Don't think when you take the risk, there's nothing but failure. You have to be confident in yourself that when this does happen, that you pick yourself right back up and you just keep going with what you had going on.
So have you taken risks yourself that really have underpinned your confidence?
Yes, I think I'm the prime example of being very confident in a workplace. I graduated from Morgan State University, which is a HBCU in Baltimore. The day after graduation, I started with Wal-mart as an assistant manager, and every year and a half after that, I was promoted, so from assistant to co-manager and now store manager, and I really don't plan to stop. I'm just going to keep going. Whether it's another woman standing next to me or 6'7" man, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to, I told her this in the car, I'm going to be president of Walmart one day.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
So when I think about that, that's my motivation to, take risks and not be, scared of failure.
Awesome. Shelley, what underpins that confidence that you exude?
Well, thanks for saying I do, Karen. I think there's a lot that underpins confidence. I think it's a history of your own life experiences. I think it's belief that you're the person that should be making that decision. And I think it takes a long time for some people to get there. And we were talking about a sports analogy yesterday. I was a basketball player and, right up until university. And there were certain times in sports where the game would be tight and the clock would be ticking down. And I would be in there saying, oh, dear God, don't let that ball come to me. Don't foul me. Don't put me at the line. And I remember working through that and getting to the point where I was saying, I hope it's me. I'm going to get fouled. I have a heck of a flop now. I want to get fouled because I believed I should be the one on the line. And not that I was the best shot or the most incredible athlete, but I could pull it together in that moment and have that clarity to make that score. And now, I think my confidence comes not from the fact that I'm the best person to make that decision, but I'm confident I can get the facts, pull the team together, survey the situation, understand the strategy, and lead that team in the best direction.
Awesome. Mary Beth, you have a fascinating background. You came from outside retailer through the Sam's business and now in Walmart US. What is it that makes you so confident?
Thanks for saying I am. I think most of all, if I look back and when I felt the most confident in a particular situation, it was when I was prepared, right? I came to the table understanding the topic. Sometimes, and Shelley, you and I were talking about this morning, sometimes you're cold called, right? What is it? How do you get through that? And there's 2 things I think help me get through those situations. And first, Shelley, as you pointed out this morning, you probably know more than anyone else in the topic that you're being asked. So relax and trust yourself, you're going to answer the question well. And the second is, if all else fails, we've all screwed things up before or flubbed things, and we're still here. It's not going to kill you, right? There are very few life situations that actually will. And I think we were also sharing some past, life backgrounds. Those tough times that you've been through are excellent preparation for a simple question during the officers' meeting, right?
I love that concept of preparation because it speaks to what Katty talked about of competence and confidence. And if you look at those two concepts, I'll bet you throughout your career you've seen some great leaders who actually mixed those two together. And I would love to hear some of those stories of what you observed through your eyes of competent and confidence in leaders that you view as successful. Shelley?
Well, I think there's some great examples throughout history of people that have incredible confidence and competence. And I've had the opportunity in my career to work for some really incredible leaders. And there was a particular point in my career when I worked for a less functional chain, we shall say, than the one we all work for today. And there were some enormous decisions that needed to be made in the area of the business that I ran. And I was sort of really contemplating and trying to get every fact and every reason and trying to decide whether we should continue to run this division or close this division. And I was looking at the P&L, looking at my competitors, studying the real estate, trying to find the definitive decision. And I did, in fact, have all of the facts. But what I had never done is made a go or no-go macro level decision at that size before. And my boss at that time said, listen, you're going to beat this thing to death. You're going to beat this decision to death, and it's never going to be definitive. You're going to have to say, what is your gut telling you? And his competence in his ability to lead major decisions gave me the confidence to say, I'm really being paid for my opinion at this point, for gathering the facts and coming to that resolution. And seeing somebody who had that level of expertise, long experience in the business, just applying the same set of facts that I have with a different level of confidence was really eye-opening for me.
Well, so if you look at the competence that is necessary for you to do your jobs, the competence that is necessary, do you think Katty is right? Do you think that if you waited to assemble all of the competencies, that it would have made any difference in the success that you have today in your job? Think of a store manager. You've moved very, very quickly. Do you think it would make any difference if you had checked all of the 100% of the boxes?
I think if I would have waited and not been as confident as I was, I would be taking back my success. I would be cheating myself of something that, I really can do. So just taking that leap of faith and doing what you know that you can do without anyone telling you that you can or cannot do it was the key.
So was there somebody behind you that was basically saying you can do it, or was it you, Jaquetta?
It was part me, and I have a mentor. His name's Adler. He's currently a market manager. He was always my cheerleader. So when I thought I couldn't do it, he was always behind me saying, go, go, go. So no matter what I thought, he was always that, I guess you say, wearing my T-shirt, that champion for me. So anytime I thought I couldn't do it, he was right there.
Wow. And did it make you more confident?
Yes,
to go and
he's pretty confident himself.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he? So that's an interesting mentor story. So merchandising is the business here at Walmart. It is putting the right assortment together, and our customers respond to it. So competence and confidence in your field is a fascinating topic. What kind of leadership examples have you seen in mixing those together?
Wow. I think, back to the previous question, if you know too much about your category sometimes, that can actually be a bad thing. You should jump in, and because then you're in the situation of the customer, actually you have an opportunity to see it from their perspective and learn and bring that to the table. So I have a little saying, I'll pull new merchants aside and tell them, you're actually at your most valuable in your first 6 months because you're seeing it as a rookie just as the customer sees it. So talk about it. What are your initial observations? They really do matter and bring a lot to the table.
Well, so ladies, one of the expertise focuses that we have in having everything all ticked and tied, what we just heard was your fresh eyes in a new area is what brings a huge amount of value. So that is one of those really important tips, is don't think that it's so much about what you know that will bring the value, but it is those fresh eyes and those fresh ideas early on as you transition that may in fact bring the biggest opportunity for growth and to be competent in the role. Perfectionism. Katty talked about it. The lack of risk taking and the reason not to take risks, and nervousness to speak up, being afraid to either speak first or not having the right. These things lead to a perception of lack of confidence and in fact the voice that's going on in your head. I love Katty's comment, which is, I'm right there with you. Here's somebody who writes the definitive work on confidence for women saying, I'm there with you. How have you individually beaten back those voices in order to appear confident and to take those risks and move forward? I know that our own stories are very, very inspirational. Katty?
Do not, what I always tell myself, and I would like to tell you guys, is do not over-prepare. Being over-prepared could actually hurt you in a sense. Make sure you're calm, relaxed, and that you have a clear head. You might jot down a few notes, but don't over-prepare to where you're sounding like you just wrote a speech for class and you proofread it about 5 times. Just be calm, be yourself, and everything will come to you.
Awesome. Don't wing it, but don't over-prepare.
Right.
I had the opportunity to have a workplace where the supervisor never made any decisions. And when you never make any decisions, all decisions ultimately get made by neglect. They default to yes or they default to no. And oftentimes in learning the kind of leader that you want to be, it's helpful to see the kind of leader you don't want to be. And I saw what happens to an organization when there isn't any risk-taking and when there isn't any confidence at the top. And so when I had the opportunity to be in those leadership roles, I would bring the team together and say, with all the information and facts that we know today, we're going to decide this and we're going this way. And pretty soon we'll know whether that was right or wrong. The customers will tell us, the profits will tell us, and if we are, great, we'll continue. And if not, we'll adjust that a little bit to the left. And it was the transparency and the thought process around that to the team that gave them confidence that we're going to go in that direction. And if we need to adjust, we will. And sort of seeing both good examples of that and bad has helped me a lot.
So let me just put you on the spot.
Okay, Kiernan.
Is it going on in your head, that voice going on in your head about perfectionism and nervousness to speak up? Or have you somehow transcended all of that in order to appear as this unbelievably funny and confident leader? I know you hate it. It's like, oh, that's not me. But that's an element of confidence too.
So like the nice duck on the surface and underneath it's like, yoing.
So is it in your head, and how have you gotten past that?
Oh, sure. I think it's it. By the way, I think you're arrogant if it's not in your head. If you think, isn't everyone just going to love my rap every minute? That's the difference between confidence and gross.
Arrogance.
Yeah, cocky and confident, those aren't a good combination.
So talk about that, because I think that as women, we fear being viewed as cocky as opposed to confident. Talk about how you do that balance.
Hubris means no one better than I because I am better than you. Confidence means I'm the right person to lead, to be the coordinator of these experts and to lead this effort. It's not saying that you individually are superior. You just have the ability to pull the best out of other people. And I think there's a big difference between hubris and confidence. And I think there is people who are afraid if they appear confident that people are going to think they have a tremendous amount of hubris or are cocky. But I think I've transcended that part.
Okay. Okay. Is it okay if I tell the story of Mary Beth? So when we were putting the panel together, and there was a thought of who would sit together in order to tell our stories. Mary Beth did her version of "I'm not worthy," and I thought to myself, here's someone who really understands their business, really has wonderful Wal-mart values, and is confident, who thinks, I'm not confident.
Ironic,
sure.
isn't it? Right.
It is ironic. So the voice is there, and yet you push past it in the business. How do you do that? Tell us how you do that.
I would say my aha moment was another woman's aha moment. So I'll tell it now. Madeleine Albright was our first female Secretary of State, and before that, she was appointed our ambassador to the UN. Now let's back up and understand who she is. She's fluent in 4 languages, one of which Russian she picked up when her twins were in NICU for an extended period of time. So she started taking, and she couldn't have them at home, so she started taking Russian as a distraction to that situation. Full ride to Wellesley College, political science, and she has a master's and a PhD from Columbia, worked with the National Security Council. So she tells the story of going into her first meeting in the UN, and she's sitting there at that famous table. She's the only woman at the table, and her very first meeting, and she's nervous, and her instinct was not to speak, just to get the lay of the land, check it out a little bit, not to speak. And she says then in this moment, she realized if she didn't speak at that table, the United States of America would not be heard on the topic. So it was her role, it was her job. So two things struck me out of that. One is that Madeleine Albright, someone whose career I have followed and I've admired her for years, I got to hear her tell that story in person, and just understanding that is in our head. If Madeleine Albright's a little nervous about speaking up, it's okay for me to feel that way too. The second thing I took away is, especially as you become a leader through the organization, you have to speak up on behalf of your team, whether if you're an individual contributor, you're a team of one, right? Or you manage a few people, or you manage thousands. It's your responsibility to speak up and make sure that they're heard. And so those things have really helped me overcome the nervousness of speaking out.
So as you've come up through your own journey, undoubtedly, you've been mentoring other women. You mentor men and women, and value the talent there. Have you noticed yourself a difference as you mentor women, as you watch the organizations? You run a very large store, you run a very large region of international and business. Have you noticed a difference with regard to confidence yourself between men and women?
Yes, I notice a big difference. Women tend to step back in the limelight when men, it doesn't matter if they think they know or they really do know, they come to the forefront and they say what they need to say. So when I mentor and challenge myself, I make sure I step to the forefront. I make sure I sit in the front in any room setting and don't bear off to the back. When we're in group settings, we're touring the stores, I make sure I'm in front and center, so when I have something to say, my voice can also be heard, and I don't have to be in the back of any settings.
Wow. So you have seen that difference in the store associates that you lead,
Yes.
as well as your peers.
Yes.
How about you, Shelley?
I have, Karen Ann, and I think we've talked a bit about it today. And I discount sometimes just the fact that the role that you have, and the role that I have, and the role that you have, Karen Ann, and the role that you have as a store manager, how women in Walmart look up and then can say that is a possibility for me. And we think that those times sort of have passed. But when you get that feedback after a meeting like this, or after a speech I might give in a country where someone comes up and says, it's so good to see a woman in that position, and you know that it's giving them hope that they can achieve that. But then when you sit down one-on-one and talk to them about their career path, it's very much about what we've heard today. It's, yes, I saw that posting, but it says 7 years of experience, and I have 6. And you say, no. Apply for that job, even if it's through the experience of the interview, even if it's to understand how your skill set stacks up. But you have the qualifications to be a leader. And I think men, earlier in their career, figured out that the secret sauce of leadership is confidence, and isn't necessarily the tick on every single box. And I think women think the secret sauce of leadership is the consistent preparation of every single tick. And it is a combination of competence and confidence, and we've just got to get them to make those moves earlier.
Yeah. Who is it that would be qualified to lead the UK, Canada, and Africa? No one.
Nobody.
Nobody is qualified for that.
Geez, I thought I was all right.
So
You're right, until you have the job.
We are creatures of Walmart who need confidence. We are leaders of Walmart that should be confident. Our customers need us. Our customers are overwhelmingly women, and we can be confident in what we do. So I am going to throw it back to all of the locations, technically connected, for the local discussion.